the eternal creator God, the one monotheistic God who is in charge of everything and not part of this world. Now, I want to put Ian Whiteman on the spot right now because he's not here and he can't defend himself. But anyway, he asked me last week, I don't see monotheism in the text anywhere. Where are you coming up with that idea? And I was so happy that he asked that question. He actually apologized. He said, I thought I derailed your class for a second. And I thanked him for that because monotheism is not in the text. But this idea of God as Yahweh, an unpronounceable, incomprehensible being that created everything, that takes an unprecedented front and center in this narrative. God actually says, I have a new name. And he says it in some funny places. And I told my wife this, I'm just going to share this with you. And she said, I would tell them that this is your premise, not gospel truth. I have decided not to say that. I have decided to tell you that I don't believe this is a matter of salvation, right? This is a matter of our understanding and perception of who God is. So I do see this as very important. And this is my search for how to make sense of the things that don't make sense in the Exodus story and so many of the Old Testament stories. So thank you, Ian. Thank you, Sarah. And we'll move on. The implications of monotheism, we talked about those. I just want to highlight them again. Probably the most important is morality. If you believe that there is a creator God who did all of this, then somebody else can make the rules besides you. You don't get to make the rules. There is a God who created us with a purpose, created the world, and he makes the rules. They make the rules. Yahweh makes the rules. What else is up there? Why now? That was last week's, right? We started talking about monotheism, and we agreed that Moses seems to have another agenda. Pharaoh seems to know what that agenda is. God seems to have another agenda. And I posit that it's monotheism, that God is trying to convert the Egyptians and Pharaoh to an understanding that he is the one and only creator God. But why? We've got 1 million people enslaved that he needs to get out of Egypt. He made a promise. So why now? And we talked about the right time argument, which is humanity needs to understand the truth of God, and the Jews need freedom. So let's just take out 2 birds with 1 stone. But then I would, again, posit that there is a strategic element to this. And it has to do with ending the idea of might makes right. And that still exists in our society and our cultures today. If I can, I get to. If I'm bigger than you, stronger than you, more wealthy than you, I get to, because I can. And it doesn't matter if I am disrespectful, if I don't preserve your dignity, if I don't pay attention to the fact that you're one of God's creatures. That is out of step with the morality of monotheism. And so, if God is in fact trying to free his people by converting Pharaoh, he's going to need a plan. he's going to need a plan, and then he's going to need a backup plan. I forgot to call my daughter. There's this movie where, I don't know if it's Ocean's 11. It's, make a plan, stick to the plan. When the plan fails, abandon the plan and make it up as you go. God's going to need a plan, and it's going to fail, and then he's going to have a backup plan. And this task that he is going about trying to accomplish is so hard that he might need a backup plan. And he might also have to have an alternative after that. So let's, this was the assignment I gave you. We'll talk about it today. How is it that God introducing monotheism to Egypt, the Hebrews, and the world is equivalent to what we see in the New Testament story? And so we'll get into today's class, the plans. We need a battle plan here. So, here's plan A. We'll use the direct approach, right? It's God. We'll be honest. After all, Pharaoh deserves to know the truth, so we'll just tell him, I'm God, those are my people, I created the world, you need to let them go, right? But since God is actually out of this world, truly an alien, he might need to adjust his vocabulary a bit so that Pharaoh understands what he's talking about. And it's interesting, we didn't talk about this together, but if you read Exodus 5, verses 1 through 3, verse 1 is God saying, I'm God, I'm Jehovah, I am Yahweh, those are my people, I want to celebrate with them, let them go. And categorically, Pharaoh says, no, I don't know who you are. Moreover, I will not release these people. So then we go into verse 3, where Moses says, we happened upon this Elohim, this force that's ours, and he said, come out into the desert and sacrifice to me. And if we don't go do that, he might kill us. He'll get angry. So we need to go do that. Give us 3 days to go out there. And Pharaoh doesn't say categorically, no. If you go back and read starting in verse 4, what Pharaoh says is, what are you doing stirring up the people? Why are you making them think about spirituality? As a matter of fact, you guys must just have too much time on your hands. And he actually treats his rejection of argument 2 is very different. And it suggests that God connected with him. God made inroads there. He started to speak Pharaoh's language, and Pharaoh understood it. So, how might we do this? Well, you probably need a sign of some sort, a non-violent sign. This is a peaceful attempt to free these people and educate the Egyptians. So let's use one, not a trick, right, but a sign that demonstrates God's undeniable authority. So let's read this. Somebody read Exodus 7, verses 8 through 13 for me. Uh-oh. Go ahead. It's right here. You don't have to look it up.
The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, work a miracle, then you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, that it may become serpent. So Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh, and thus they did, just as the Lord had commanded. And Aaron threw his staff down before Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called for the wise men and the sorcerers, and they and the magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret arts. For each one threw down his staff, and they turned into serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them, as the Lord had said.
Okay. Keep in mind, every time you see this, all caps, it's Yahweh, right? So anything unusual about this story this narrative that you see? Anybody at all find anything a little weird about it? I've tried to get you in the ask weird questions mindset, but it may not, it's okay. How did the Egyptian magicians create? Also, there's a timing issue, right? I mean, this happens in front of Pharaoh, and the magicians aren't there, and they get an email or a text. Get in here. He's turning sticks into snakes, and I need you to do the same thing. And I can hear the text coming back. Give us a few minutes. We need to gather our stuff, and we need to practice a little bit. So maybe tomorrow or the next day. Who knows? I don't know. It doesn't tell us, right? It just says they came, they did it. But how does it end?
It's hard.
Okay, you're absolutely right. You answered my question. How does it just before it end?
Aaron's serpents eats their serpents.
Actually, Josh, you're wrong. What does it say? Yeah. It doesn't say Aaron's serpent swallowed the Egyptian's serpent. Don't you think that's a little strange? What's that about? Well, what was the staff? Every time there is a statue or a sarcophagus of a pharaoh, he's got something in his hands. Do you know what those things are? There are two things in Pharaoh's hands. In modern day monarchies, when I say modern, I mean last few hundred years, there's the orb and the scepter. What was it in ancient Egypt? The flail and the crook or the staff. And they represented authority, absolute authority of Pharaoh, his control, his power. This was an undeniable sign that God was God. Okay, you can do parlor tricks. You can turn sticks into snakes. But can your snakes eat my stick? Because my stick is going to eat yours. That stick that you beat people with, that stick that gives you authority, I'm going to destroy it. So, a few observations here. Aaron's staff ate the Egyptian staff. Pharaoh's crook and flail were symbols of power. And remember Exodus 7, verse 1. Anybody know what Exodus 7, verse 1 says? It's a really interesting. It says, God says to Moses, I am going to make you, can anybody finish it? Like God to Pharaoh. Now, Pharaoh reckons himself to be a god, right? And God is saying, I'm going to make you who he thinks he is. I'm going to give you authority over him like he thinks he has over everybody else. All right. So, how could this plan fail? We'll go in, we'll tell him the truth. If he doesn't really understand it, we'll change our vocabulary. Surely, Pharaoh is a smart person, reasonable, logical. That's our plan, right? How could it fail? Not a redundant question. It's in yellow. Come on. We got a lot of material to get through. 63 sides, and we're only on number 4. How could it fail?
Pharaoh's heart could be hardened.
Pharaoh's heart could be hardened. Pharaoh could say, no. I mean, the answer's right there in the book. The way it fails is Pharaoh says no, right? So, we got to go to the backup plan, right? What's the backup plan? Well, we'll demonstrate our authority over the Egyptian Elohim. Now, this is really an important point. The Exodus story The Exodus narrative is not about God battling the Egyptians. It's not about God battling Pharaoh. It's about God battling bad ideas. And it reminds me of 1 Corinthians 10. We take every thought captive. I think I might have written that down, but I can't find it. We take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. It's the same battle that we're fighting today. It's the battle in the mind of things that you think and believe that aren't true. And that's where God is going to fight. And this is my next slide. Warning, warning, warning. You're going to take on the pantheon and you're going to try and convince Pharaoh and the priests and the Egyptians that polytheism is false and that there's only one God. And you're going to have to really break down or get over this hurdle of the alliance theory. The alliance theory, Mr. Whiteman, is not in the text. Monotheism is not in the text, and the alliance theory is not in the text, but it's okay because I made it up. But here's what, let me show you. First of all, I want you to play a little game with me today. It's called Who Wants to Be a Polytheist? And we need to review what it means. If you're an Egyptian and you believe in polytheism, what does that mean? Well, it means that there are a bunch of different powers, forces, Elohim, in the heavens. And they are not good-natured. And they fight with each other. And they have big egos. And they tussle. And every so often, that tussling and that fight and that conflict results in things that don't necessarily work to humanity's best interest. And we can see this through natural disasters and erratic weather. But they don't care, right? These Elohim don't care about humans. They care about themselves. And if they were left to themselves, they'd wreak havoc on the whole world. However, good news, we have an Elohim of our own here on earth, known as Pharaoh, and his job is to protect us from that chaos of the heavens where the gods are fighting. But we can, in fact, gain their favor, right? And that's where the whole sacrifices comes from. That's where all of these temples come from. And I need you to remember that because you'll get it in a second. Now let's talk about the alliance theory. Let's start by just looking at the plagues. We're going to use the plagues to discredit pantheism and convince people about monotheism. So, Exodus chapter 7, verse 14, the Nile turns into blood. That's Happy over here. This is a rendering of Happy. Happy is the god of the Nile. And who wants to read? I need 4 volunteers to read this text. And by the way, we're going to go through the plagues today, and it's going to take a little while. So, good and loud. Don't hesitate to put up your hand, or I'll just call on you. Okay, Dee, would you start? Thanks for putting up your hand. Yeah, Dee? All right. The Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is stubborn. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he is going out to the water, and station yourself to meet him on the bank of the Nile, and you shall take in your hand the staff that was turned into a serpent, and you shall say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But behold, you have not listened until now. Thus says Yahweh, by this you shall know that I am Yahweh. Behold, I will strike the water that is in the Nile with the staff that is in my hand, and it will be turned into blood. Next reader. Anyone?
Fish that are in the Nile will die, and the Nile will become foul, and the Egyptians will find difficulty in drinking water from the Nile. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, over their streams, and over their pools, and all over their reservoirs of water. And they may become blood, and there will be blood throughout the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone.
Interesting. Did I skip one? How about this one? Yeah, I did skip one.
So Moses and Aaron did even as the Lord had commanded. He lifted up the staff and struck the water that was in the Nile, in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, and all the water that was in the Nile was turned to blood. The fish that were in the Nile died, and the Nile became foul, so that the Egyptians could not drink water from the Nile. And the blood was through all the land of Egypt.
One more.
But the magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret hearts. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Then Pharaoh turned and went into his house with no concern for this. So all the Egyptians dug around the Nile for water to drink. 7 days passed after the Lord.
Okay. Now, the Nile was so important to these people. And this wasn't, I can turn water into wine, I can turn water into blood. This was the whole river. The whole river. And I mean, the stench of the fish, it's really. So let's just summarize this. I do this for you out there, you polytheists, right? Happy is the god of the Nile. Aaron's staff was used to enact this plague. The Egyptian magicians were able to replicate it. Pharaoh's heart was hardened because the magicians were able to replicate this plague. They kind of were, right? They could take a glass of water and show you that it was blood. I'm not sure they were doing rivers. First of all, I'm not sure there were very many other rivers around to demonstrate that they could do this, right? It lasted for 7 days, and interestingly enough, it didn't require anyone to intervene to stop it, as many of the other plagues do. It appears as though upstream, the Nile just washed it out. But it took 7 days for that to happen. Anyway, so you're a polytheist. The Nile's just been turned to blood. How do you explain that? Happy's unhappy. That's right. You know? Gold star. The god of the Nile is not happy with us. And so that's our explanation. Thank you very much. I'm done washing up. See you, Moses. And Pharaoh turns around and walks away. Okay? So, go again? Uh-oh.
What do you do? Great sacrifices. So he can change his mind and fix it. I'll tell you the difference to that. It just happened on a 7-day stop.
Maybe they thought they did it.
Well, I'm wondering if they went out, okay, let's go back and offer sacrifices and do whatever it is. In the meantime, we'll pick dishes on the side and get clean water. So
Right.
crisis
Averted. I really appreciate you saying that. Again, an insightful comment, because they did go offer sacrifices. Happy's unhappy. Get over there in the temple, Happy's temple, and offer some sacrifices. You Egyptian priests, we need to take care of this. Okay? Uh-oh. That's an Egyptian frog. That's an Egyptian, can't remember what they call that. The Egyptian Nile, the Nile, I don't remember. Anyway, I just wanted you to see what you'd be stepping on. Right? I mean, this is gross. I want you to know, I looked at a lot of gross photographs for all of you, and you're worth it. Okay? But who's next? Let's read here. We got 4 slides to read through. I'll start. When the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me.' But you refuse to let them go. Behold, I will smite your whole territory with frogs. The Nile will swarm with frogs, the whole which will come up and go into your house and into your bedroom and into your bed and into your houses of your servants and your people and into your ovens and into your kneading bowls. So the frogs will come up on you and your people and all of your servants." Who's next?
And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, over the streams, and over the pools, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt. So Aaron stretched out his hand into the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. The magicians did the same with their secret arts, making frogs come up on the land of Egypt.
Okay. Someone else?
And Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron, and said, entreat the Lord that he remove the frogs from me, from my people, and I will let the people go, that they may sacrifice to the Lord. Moses said to Pharaoh, the honor is yours to tell me. When shall I entreat for you and your servants and your people that the frogs be destroyed from you and your houses, that they may be left only in the Nile?
I just have to stop here. You hear Moses? Tell me, my liege, when would you like me to entreat on your behalf so that the frogs might disappear? And then he said, tomorrow. So he said, may it be according to your word, my liege, that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs will depart from you and your house and your servants and your people, and they will be left only in the Nile. And Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried to the Lord concerning the frogs which he had inflicted on Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses and the courts and the fields. So they piled them up in heaps, and the land became foul. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, he hardened his heart and did not listen to them, as the Lord said. So, anything you want to say about this?
Couple of things.
Go ahead, Mr. Whiteman.
Firstly, if you have a problem with your gods, then the priests go and solve the problem. They go and treat them, do whatever the gods require, they cut themselves.
He's a good polytheist, isn't he?
Do all this sort of stuff. What it involves, it appease them and it changes. So, here it falls in. Priests of God and says, fix the problem.
Right.
Aaron doesn't say, because okay, don't worry, I will go to God for you.
Right.
Acting like a priest.
Yeah. But this is one that didn't just disappear on its own. And something happened between when it started and when Pharaoh called Moses back.
I think it's why the key asked Pharaoh when he wanted it to happen. Nobody, they kind of go and entreat their gods and hope that it's going to happen. Here's it, whatever the gods please. Moses says, you tell me, and I'll ask God to happen on that day. So it was kind of a control process going on.
Right. So, Heket is the goddess of fertility, and she is there on the On the left, the amphibian frog. Aaron's staff, again, was used with this plague, his stick. The magicians could make frogs come out of the Nile, but they couldn't make them go back in, and they couldn't make them disappear. This is power without precision for them. But Yahweh lets Pharaoh decide and says, not only do I have the power to make them go away, I can do it whenever you want. I have temporal precision. And that's the kind of control I have. But relief comes, Pharaoh hardened his heart. So, you're a polytheist. The Nile turned to blood, and now there's an infestation of frogs. How do you explain this? What's going on in the spiritual realms?
Well, if I were counsel for the polytheists, I would point out that Aaron had said he would return the frogs to the Nile, but then they had to eat them up, so he didn't fulfill the bargain. Therefore, he's full of crud, and it's still polytheism, maybe.
Okay, a really good argument. Sounds like you might be an attorney someday. Anybody else?
Really what's going on is the God of the river and the God of heaven and earth. That's the poor Jews who are afflicted by their behavior are discovered are part of it. So somebody needs to go and
We've got at least 3 elders here, and Ian's understanding of polytheism is just uncanny. Right. I mean, we understand polytheism to be these gods in conflict, right? So the first thing you say is they must have been fighting. Or maybe you say, maybe they're both mad at us. Maybe not only Happy, but Heket is angry with us. And this is directed at humanity because somebody's coming along saying it's going to happen, right? So we're still on plan B. Now we've got Geb. This is the strangest looking god, and it's in the hieroglyphics. I mean, he always has a goose nearby. He's the god of the earth, I think. Anyway, Exodus 8:16 through 19. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the earth, so that it may become gnats throughout all the land of Egypt. They did so, and Aaron stretched out his hand with the staff and struck the dust of the earth, and there was gnats on man and beast, and all the dust of the earth became gnats through all the land of Egypt. The magicians tried with their secret arts to bring forth gnats, but they could not. And so there were gnats on man and beast, and then the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen as the Lord had said. Up to this point, I don't get any indication that the Hebrews are spared from these plagues. We haven't seen that in the text at all, right? Throughout the land of Egypt, gnats are all over everything. So, Geb is the god of the earth. This is the last record where Aaron's staff is used. Just FYI. Struck the ground. Unfortunately, Geb is in front of it. The magicians couldn't reproduce it. Now, if you are an advisor to the king and you can't do something that the king asks you to do, what do you say? The gods did it, right? And what do you suppose the response is from the king? I am not happy, right? I'm angry. I'm digging my heels in. I'm hardening my heart. It doesn't say he hardened his heart against God or against against Moses. It says he hardened his heart against them. Who's them in the text? The magicians, right? All right. You're a polytheist. I don't know if I should let Ian answer. So the Nile's turned to blood. Then there's this infestation of frogs. Now there's an infestation of gnats. What's your explanation? This is not a trick question.
Same thing, they're still mad at us.
They're still mad at us. Happy has teamed up with not only Haket, but also with Geb. I call this argument the alliance theory, right? Well, let's just keep going.
But they didn't say it was their God.
What's that?
They said it was God that did it, not
A God, because that's what they believe, right?
That's not what it says. It doesn't say a God. Here it says God.
Right. Elohim is the word.
Elohim.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is just means a general power, general force. There is a force, a divine force that is actually doing this. They are starting to accept the fact that maybe this person who identifies himself as Yahweh is in fact belongs in the pantheon. Remember the first time that Moses went to Pharaoh, like checked the Rolodex. I've never heard of this guy. I've never heard of whoever it is that you said, and so I'm not letting the people go. Now all of a sudden, the magicians are saying, this actually is a force, a heavenly power that is acting.
Not throw a spanner in the works. You could throw a wrench in their legs. So I'm not a polytheist, but I do have a God called logic. My God logic says, first of all, the river turned to blood and became uninhabitable. Therefore, the frogs had to get out. The fish couldn't. Frogs don't live in the frogs all die. What happens? Well, you get infestation of bugs and stuff. Come to the rocking frogs. The logic approach. Why is God involved?
He's not in your story. I see that you're slowly backing away from the label that I've given you as a polytheist. You don't want to go see the elders, so I don't disagree that some people may have come up with alternative theories. But I am just trying to present an understanding of this narrative of why did, one of the questions we had, why did God use 10 plagues when he only needed one?
How many gods did they have?
Well, we've got this alliance theory. Remember the warning signs? Hundreds, right? So why 10? Okay? So that is Capri over there on the left, and I just thought I couldn't find any good illustrations, so I thought, and I was gonna put a fly like I put the frog, but let me tell you, I've seen some gross images. Anyway, plague 4, the flies.
You got bees and flies.
Oh, I do? Really? Are those bees? Well, the Google search was flies. Okay. Yeah. Egyptian flies are striped with yellow and black. All right. Anybody who's just come in and wants to read?
Sure. Now that the Lord said to Moses, rise early in the morning and present yourself before Pharaoh. As he comes out of the water, and say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. For if you do not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on you, and on your servants, and on your people, and into your houses. And the houses of the Egyptians will be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they dwell. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people are living, so that no swarms of flies will be there, in order that you may know that the Lord am in the midst of the land. I will put a division between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign will occur. Then the Lord did so. And there came great swarms of flies into the house
swarms of flies in all the land of Egypt.
Oops. Can you read this, Sarah? Yeah.
Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, "Go, sacrifice to your God in the land." But Moses said, "It's not right to do so, for we will sacrifice to the Lord our God what is an abomination to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice what is an abomination to the Egyptians before their eyes, will they not then stone us? We must go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he commanded." Pharaoh said, "I will let you go, that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, only you shall not go very far away. Make supplication for me." Then Moses said, "Behold, I am going out from you, and I shall make supplication to the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. Only do not let Pharaoh deal deceitfully again in not letting the people go to sacrifice."
Okay, so Moses went out from Pharaoh. He made supplication to the Lord, and the Lord did as Moses asked, and he removed the swarms of flies. And the servants from Pharaoh and his servants and his people, not one remained. I wish that would happen to me. But Pharaoh hardened his heart at this time also and did not let the people go. Anything that strikes you as different about this particular plague?
It was separated between the Egyptians and the Hebrews.
There was a separation, right? People are living in Goshen now. This God, Capri, is the God that, I think I wrote it down, to the beetle-headed God who moves the sun across the sky. He drags the sun every day across the sky and separates the day from the night. And at this point, God said, and he also is in charge of flying insects. And so God says, I'm going to separate my people. They're not going to have to deal with the flies. Okay? He makes a division. Now, when we were playing the Exodus game, well, actually, the week that I was gone and you guys played hooky and didn't play the game, one of the things that came up was, what's up with Pharaoh's weird interest in some of these plagues, right? There was the timing. There was when the cattle died, he went looking. In this particular plague, that was God's idea. God's the author of the one who said, I have a different kind of control than your gods have. God said, I can do it when, and he said, I can do it where, because I'm absolutely in control, right? And this is the first time that he does that spatially. He says, I have the precision to stop it. And we'll find out that he does it again, because maybe we'll chalk this up to the wind. Maybe there was just winds that were blowing, and Goshen didn't get the flies because the winds were there. I'm trying to circumvent Whiteman's question before it comes up and his logic. Okay, so so Pharaoh conditionally gives in. This is interesting. He's starting to make progress, right? Okay, you guys can go. Just don't leave my jurisdiction. Just make your sacrifices here in Egypt, in my kingdom. And all that abomination stuff, basically what Moses was saying is, look, we kill goats and rams. These are representative of your gods. We can't do that in front of Egypt and Egyptians. We can't kill a ram. That's like killing Ra, right? We can't do that. We got to go out there. We got to get 3 days away so nobody can see us. Nobody even knows we're there, right? So you're a polytheist. The Nile turned to blood, and then there was an infestation of frogs, and then there was an infestation of gnats, and now there are swarms of flies. What's your explanation?
Another God is mad at us.
Another God is mad at us.
But this
Somehow there was a Goshen thing going on. We're not sure how we explain that. We got to do a little dancing and a little hand waving there, right? But let's take a little intermission. It seems up to this point that God has actually been pretty merciful with the plagues, right? He's actually let they're sufficiently benign enough that he doesn't protect his people from them until the very end there with flies. He's just not, and anyway, just a little inconvenient. This was an observation I made. So have you noticed what hasn't been affected in the land of Egypt by these plagues? And I'll give you a hint. It's the number one issue with voters, even today.
The economy?
Ding, 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 ding. Maybe there was a 7-day loss of fishing for the fishermen in the first plague, right? But up to this point, there's no effect, just a lot of inconvenience. We got a water shortage, water scarcity, we've got frogs, we've got gnats, we've got flies. How inconvenient, how nasty. But we're gonna have to up the ante here, right? Like how many gods are there? Hundreds. And we, it's like, what time is it? It's 10 minutes to 10. I've only got 8 minutes left. I mean, we're not going to get done. But let's do another one. This is Hathor. She is the goddess of love and protects the animals. I don't get how they do these assignments. But she is sometimes pictured as a sultry female body with the head of a heifer in the hieroglyphics. It's very interesting, but I chose not to put that one up here. I just put that. Here's a real plague that's going on. Let's do some reading. There's only 7 verses. Who wants to read for me? Go ahead, give it a shot. Whoops. Yeah, sorry. When it glitches like that, it means I'm going to skip a slide. That's what the computer's telling me. Nothing will die that belongs to the sons of Israel. They had their own animals. And the Lord set a definite time, saying, tomorrow the Lord will do this thing in the land. So the Lord did this thing on the next day, and all the livestock of Egypt died, but of the livestock of the sons of Israel, not one died. And Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not even one of the livestock of Israel dead, but the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. He's fact-checking now, right? It was hypothesized that maybe what Pharaoh was doing was going to see if he could take the livestock away from the Israelites so that he could replace his own losses. That might have been true, but I believe that what the text says here is he's fact-checking. God was very specific about what he was going to do, and Pharaoh wanted to know, did it really happen that way? Did they lose anything? So as we sort of summarize this plague, Hathor is the goddess of love, protecting the livestock. There are lots of gods that are involved with the livestock. This is one of those where it doesn't seem to be a one-on-one. God's starting to realize, I can't do 100 of these, right? I can't do hundreds of these. Yahweh provides a 24-hour grace period to allow people to repent, I think. A warning, given the last 4 plagues that happened. He says, I'll do it tomorrow. If you want to change your mind, call me back. We can always stop this game. I'm not going to do it till tomorrow, but I'm going to do it. And I said I would 4 other times. So you're bringing this on yourself, Pharaoh.
How would the Egyptians repent?
I think,
Did they take their livestock to Goshen next door?
well, he,
Or did they take them indoors and God recognized that?
I think that Egypt repents by Pharaoh saying, you can go 3 days into the 3 days journey. I will listen to Elohim. He doesn't allow this plague to affect his people again. He sets a division, and he demonstrates his spatial precision. Fact checking, we talked a little bit about, but he still digs his heels in, right? He finds out that they didn't lose anything, and he's just mad as a hornet, a wet one. So you're a polytheist. The Nile's turned to blood. Then there was an infestation of frogs. Then there was an infestation of gnats. Then there was a swarm of flies. And now all of our herds and flocks and camels and donkeys and our work animals, they've all died. Anybody want to explain it to me? We don't have much time, so don't ponder this question too long. The gods are mad. And by the way, Yahweh, you're going to have to get over this alliance theory that is going to be able to explain all of these things. You're not going to be able to convince people of monotheism. At best, you're just going to go and log yourself into the pantheon. You're going to be another one of those powerful forces. What? Well, maybe. Okay, we're not going to read this one. You can read it at home. But Isis, the god of boils, and there are some really gross pictures that I could have put up here. Yahweh strikes the Egyptian people. Now he's talking directly. He's plagued their bodies. And he says in the text, you can read it at home, I could have killed you, but I'm not. I just want you to know who I am. This is just a painful lesson. God is teaching in this particular plague. He's teaching all of Egypt. And the plagues rendered the priests and the magicians unclean. This is really kind of an interesting point, which our brother Whiteman pointed out earlier. Right? The priests have to be clean to go offer sacrifices. But not only can they not get up, but they can't go offer sacrifices here. You see, if you've had a history of plagues, smitings, leprosy, boil, slavery, gnashing of teeth, you go on the unclean side, right? The priests couldn't offer sacrifices to call this plague off. So, are you getting the pattern here? Plague, rinse, repeat. Plague, rinse, repeat. And the real question is, at what point does this alliance theory break down? And frankly, I'm kind of getting tired of this. And so I think maybe I'll stop here. What does it say? Let's see if I can find a good place to stop. This is a good homework assignment. How can we engineer a plague that would definitively put an end to this alliance theory? That's what I want you to think about and see if you can come back with it in 2 weeks. How can we come up with one of the plagues that actually stops it? No, I will not take answers. The Whitemans again with their polytheism. All right, I will stop there. I remind you, I said earlier, we're recording these classes.